Welcome to the show. This is Erin. She's going to be our glass maker for this demonstration. She'll be assisted by Catherine. Let's give them both a big round of applause. Thanks so much. I'm Michael. I'll explain the process. If you have questions, I'll be happy to answer those. But Erin has begun by collecting some clear glass from the melting furnace. This glass is 2,100 degrees Fahrenheit, and it has that bright orange glow because it's so hot. Same temperature as lava from a volcano. So just like lava glows bright orange, so does our glass. But when it cools, it will be clear. Watch that closely. Erin has blown through the pipe, trapping air with her thumb. That air is under pressure, it's expanding with the heat, and it forces its way into the soft glass on the end of the pipe. And now we have a hollow bubble. This is how we begin all of the things that we make. From here we can make a little holiday ornament, we can make a drinking cup. But to make something larger, like what Erin has in mind, we do need more glass. So she'll let this cool off, and once it cools, it will become rigid and stable, and then we can get more glass from the furnace. We have to build it up in multiple layers. So we call the layers gathers, and we use that as a term of measurement. So I could meet up with my glass blower friends at our favorite glass blower hangout at the end of a long day, and I can say, oh, I made a 3-gather vase, or a 2-gather bowl. And they would have a pretty good understanding of how much material that was, and how big the piece ended up being when it was all finished. So a little bit of compressed air helps expedite the cooling, and then Erin heads back to the furnace, and I've started an animation on our screens. This animation shows you what it looks like inside of the furnace. There's a ceramic bowl that holds 1,000 pounds of molten glass. So to collect it, we just push the pipe down beneath the surface, and then we turn and we spool it right on top. So this is similar to getting honey out of a little honey dish, using one of those little honey dipping sticks. This glass at 2,000 degrees has a very similar consistency and viscosity, so that's a really perfect example of runny molten glass, what that feels like, collecting it on the end of a pipe. So we use these wooden scoops called blocks to shape, center, and cool the glass when it comes out of the furnace. This is distributing that material evenly around that initial bubble. Now these wood tools are made of fruit wood. We like to use fruit wood because it has a really dense grain pattern. So as it burns out evenly, and then we don't get any grooves like we might get from a softer wood. So the fruit wood works great because it also has a low resin content, so there's not a lot of sap or anything that can burn and leave residue behind on the surface of the glass. So this in particular is cherry wood. We use cherry wood, apple, pear, any fruit wood works, but we have cherry in the region, so that's what we use. But after evenly distributing that material, Erin continues to inflate this a little bit further. Now, she's using an inflation system, so she's connected a hose onto the end of the pipe. And this hose essentially does the work for us. We press a pedal, which activates compressed air, flows through the hose, through the pipe, into the glass. And this is actually quite nice because we can be shaping and inflating both at the same time. We could use our own breath, but you saw Erin had to change the angle of the pipe. She had to move the pipe away from herself. So when that happens, you can't see what's happening with that material. So if you can keep it right in front of you, use that system, it's really effective, works really great. So she'll continue inflating and continue shaping. This tool that she's using now, this is another wood tool, or wood byproduct at least. It's actually newspaper, just 7 to 10 sheets of newspaper. We fold that up, we soak it in water, and we can change the shape of the glass with our hands. So we like that tool a lot. But it works just like those wooden scoops. The water turns to steam, and the glass glides on the layer of steam within them. And because of the flexibility, we can use our hands a lot. So Erin has also begun working on a constriction just off the end of the pipe, because when we work in glass in the handmade process, we typically work on the bottom of a piece first, and then we work on the top of a piece second. So she's going to make this little narrow line in that glass, and that narrow line, that's going to become the top and the opening. So whether we make something that is big and wide and open, like this bowl, or if we make something that has just a narrow opening on the top like this, they all have to have this little crease or constriction where we can remove the glass from the flow pipe. So it's a lot of back and forth between shaping and inflating, and also back and forth between the bench and the reheating furnace. As we work, that glass is always cooling down, just out in the open air. So that secondary furnace is just a big chamber of heat. There's no glass inside at all, But as long as we keep the glass hot, we can work with it really as long as we want. I watched a Czech sculptor make one human figurine, and this really intricate, really detailed human head, like perfectly anatomically correct, but it took him 8 hours to do. We don't usually make anything that takes that long because I don't have the patience. That's a really long time. It really puts a damper on lunch as well when you make something that takes such a long period of time. But it is possible. You can just keep eating it, and it's not detrimental to the material. It also means that we get our steps in a lot, just 2 or 3 at a time, back and forth between the furnace and the bench. Aaron, do you ever count steps? Like, do you keep track? Do you wear an odometer? Yeah. I don't wear, any fancy watches or keep my phone in my pocket because it would probably get melted. Probably be bad news to keep that in your pocket in the glass studio. Now, some of you on this side of the stage, you may be able to feel some of the heat coming from the reheating furnace as we have these doors open. We have the multiple sets so that we can make larger and larger items and objects, but it is 2,100 degrees as well. I'll open this furnace door. You feel it? Yeah, me too. It's kind of nice. It's nice on a winter day. It's the best place to be here in the glass studio. But we do get used to the heat when we spend an entire day in the glass studio and in front of the furnace. We're pretty spoiled here because this silver strip in the floor, you can actually see on that side, those little pop-ups from the floor, that's air conditioning. Most glass studios don't have air conditioning because it takes a lot of energy to run these natural gas furnaces, the combustion furnaces, and then it would also take a lot of energy to air condition a space. But here, we want you to all be comfortable, so we keep it very well climate controlled. But we really benefit from that. But it looks like Erin maybe has this all inflated as much as she needs, but she has asked Catherine for some additional glass. I heard her say that she wants a wrap. So this glass will be wrapped around the bubble. It will be spooled around the bubble. And this is always nice because this is a great way to show you sort of some of the additional properties of molten glass, how far we can stretch glass, how thin we can stretch glass. We can stretch glass thinner than human hair. And this wrap is being applied with extreme precision. Erin is putting that on only exactly where she wants it on the bubble. Actually, we call that a wacky wrap because there is no precision at all. She just winds it and wraps it all around for a fun, cool design, additional texture. This actually is a good example. This tree, you can kind of see the wrap around this. That's a good example. This is a similar kind of application. You just take glass, stretch it, and wrap it if you want it. We can stretch glass really thin, and like I said, thinner than human hair. That property of glass is what is really allowing us to communicate every single day. It's optical fiber. We're transmitting light through glass, and that's how we all communicate every single day. So, pretty cool. Now, on this bubble, this will also get one more component, and that is a foot. So it winds from that glass on, and that's, you can see how runny it is. It just kind of drips right onto the bottom. That's going to become the foot that's going to elevate this bowl off of the surface that it sits on when it's all finished. So Erin and Catherine will work together to finalize the shape of the foot, make sure that it's nice and flat, but not before adding a little bit more texture and design, grabbing and pinching that glass, making a nice little twisty, wavy design in the bottom of the foot. So that glass that was attached, that was wrapped around, as well as that foot, that sticks because it's all hot. The bubble is hot, and the fresh glass is hot, and hot glass sticks to other hot things. So anytime we want to add additional material, we do need it to be really hot. And when we work in the glass making process, it's really about building a foundation of understanding. So a lot of times you first will learn how to make a bubble, then you learn how to make a cup, then you learn how to put a handle on the cup to make a mug. And once you can make a mug with a handle, you can really start changing that foundation, creating a lot of additional things. So this is a little adorable, abominable snowman, but it's pretty similar to how you make a cup. The body is a cylinder, and then instead of a handle, you just put a little bit of glass on there, and it's an arm. So you really take a foundation of what you know, a foundation of understanding, then it's about building blocks, figuring out how to apply some of the techniques that you know to make something new, like something fun with this guy. But at this point, they're all done working on the bottom. So to work on the top, we're going to break this glass. We're going to remove it from the blowpipe using that constriction just off the end of the pipe. So a little bit of water will create thermal stress right at that connection point. And Catherine has made a temporary handle, which we call a punty. So with some water, we'll create thermal stress. We'll cool glass rapidly, cause it to crack, get these little fractures in the surface, and then a light tap breaks it free. And it was a successful transfer. I say we give the team a round of applause for breaking glass. It doesn't always go so smooth. I'm sure some of you have broken glass. It probably didn't break nice and clean and straight. So it is actually exciting when that works correctly, because it goes wrong quite often in our early days of glass making. Now they are just working with clear glass. If we want to add color, we usually do that at the very beginning. We have these crushed pieces of glass color called frit. So this glass is colored, and it's made into colors by adding different metal oxides and chlorides, different elements from the periodic table that makes our different colors. We roll the molten glass across those pieces, and they stick and they melt and smooth. So we usually do that right at the beginning of the process, and then that color, it's designed and formulated to really stretch and go a long ways while we move through the process. So a very small amount of color gets us a good full coverage result. But this is also a good time for questions. Does anyone have any questions? Anyone curious about anything about glass making, art, science, history, the museum, the town? Yeah.
After the glass is cooled,
Sure.
can we work on it again at a later date?
Yeah. After the glass is cooled, can we work on it again? We can. So there are a lot of different things we can do. We can cut glass, we can carve glass, we can etch glass, sand glass. But if we want to change the shape of it, we have to warm it back up. You can't really change the shape of it once it's been cooled. So when we're finished with this piece, we'll put it into an oven and we'll cool it slowly over about 12 hours. Because if we let the glass cool too quickly, it will crack and break. On the other hand, if we warm it up too quickly, it will also crack and break. It's like dropping an ice cube in warm water, it will explode. If we let our glass get too cold and then we put it into the furnace, it will explode because it expands and blows up. So we can warm it back up slowly and then heat it up in the furnace. So we could cool it down, we could leave it for a couple days, a couple weeks, a couple years, come back and warm it up slowly to temperature and then work on it some more if we want to. But a lot of times it's just easier to either start completely over and make a new one, or just finish it all in one go. Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah. Yes?
How to build up the bullet-proof glass?
Sorry,
The bullet-proof glass.
the cooling time?
No, the bullet.
Oh, bulletproof.
Yeah.
Bulletproof glass. So bulletproof glass is actually very similar to the glass you'd see in a car windshield. So it's laminated. Your windshield is 2 layers of glass with a layer of plastic in between. And that plastic is what holds the glass together. So if that windshield gets broken, if a rock comes and hits your windshield, that plastic holds it together. Bulletproof glass is essentially just thicker glass and more layers. So it's a lot of layers of glass and plastic and glass and plastic. Yeah. So I do want to draw your attention back to Erin. She's been working hard. She's opened this up quite a bit. So we've got a nice bowl. We've got a really great shape right here. But I think she'll open this a little bit further. I didn't talk to her about what she was making before, but I think she'll make this a little bit bigger. And she can do that without even really touching the glass. At this point, she can just let the glass get very hot, and as it warms up, it will start to soften and essentially try to collapse, which she can prevent by increasing her turning speed. So she can start to turn faster and faster. I can see it on our screen. It starts to spin open much bigger and much wider. And then she holds it down and makes a beautiful little ruffly design. We call this a fluted bowl. Gorgeous. Once it stretches, it can't go back to its original round shape. Glass, when it's hot, is not elastic like a balloon, so it doesn't snap back to that original shape. So now we have this beautiful bowl frozen in time, and that is the finished piece. But we do now have to slowly cool it. So that cooling time I was talking about takes place in an oven on the side of our stage. It's just under 1,000 degrees, and we call it the annealer. We will anneal this glass. We'll slowly cool it down to room temperature. So water creates thermal stress once again. A light tap breaks it free. There is a gorgeous bowl. We'll tuck this away. All the other things we made today, and you'll see this one again tomorrow. Nicely done. How about one more time for Aaron Nelson? Any last questions? Yeah. Is the glass really heavy when it's molten? So when it's, sometimes maybe 2 pounds of glass probably on the end of the pipe, but that's, you know, you're holding 2 pounds of glass out here, so over time it does start to feel a little heavier. But also when it is molten, when it's hot, it requires more torque to keep it centered, to keep it on the end of the pipe. So when it is really hot and it's moving around a lot, bigger pieces certainly feel much heavier on the end of the pipe. And then once they cool down and they stiffen up, and you don't have to fight them so much, then they feel a little bit lighter. So it's kind of ever changing. But when you work in a glass studio all day long, when you're picking up, you know, just 2 pounds at a time, well, the pipe is also a couple pounds. The pipe's probably 6 pounds or so. It does start to add up. It starts to feel pretty heavy. So it's quite exhausting. It's tough on the body. Yeah. The hardest thing to make? The hardest thing to make is probably something that you've never made before. Oh, that I've made? The hardest thing I've ever made?